Hey everybody, welcome to the Player Stake episode 340. I'm your host Justin DeSimone, and I am going solo this week. Montrell is on his security conference in Vegas for his work, so hope he's having a good time there and getting some good experiences from that. But it's just going to be me this week, and we're going to be talking about some Nintendo stuff. There was a Nintendo Direct last week that had some interesting reveals in there, and then I do have a lot to talk about with the games I'm playing this week actually. So that's gonna be most of what we're talking about this week. But Montrell will be back next week, so it'll be back to our normal setup for the show. So don't worry about that. But yeah, how's everybody doing this week? It's been a long week of work for me. I've been having to do reviews, which is always fun. I struggle a lot with writing these, but got them done, finished them today, so I'm happy that is kind of off the plate and I can feel free again. So yeah, it's been a long week, but we're almost to the end of it. So all right, let's get into the main show here. So, for those of you who haven't listened before, this is our weekly show where we talk about video games, video game news, and other topics pertaining to video games. We post at 6 a.m. Central Time on Fridays on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, and your favorite podcast app of choice. And if you'd like to send us questions, you can do so send an email to theplayerstake01@gmail.com, and we will answer it on the show. Please bear with me here. If there's any weird pauses or anything like that, I still have a cough from my COVID bout last week. That's still lingering here. So, if I'm silent for a few seconds, I'm just hitting the cough button and getting it out. So not blasting your ears with it. So, all right. So I'm just gonna get into what I've been playing this week, and we have had a major release in the last week with Borderlands 4, and I've played, 10, 15 hours probably so far. I have two characters. I've gotten a soldier to level 20, and I have a siren, I think that's level 11 or 12, somewhere in there. I'm playing the soldier with our friend Jet in co-op, and the siren I'm kind of playing solo when he's not around. This is interesting. I've been really critical of Borderlands 3 in the past, and I still feel that way now. But playing 4 is funny so far because I've pretty much Jet and I earlier this week we got through ostensibly what I would say is like the first major zone of the three zones in the game. And we defeated the final boss of that area basically, and we're kind of ready to move on to the next area. And this game, I don't know how to say this. It's I don't want to frame this negative because I don't really have negative feelings about the game necessarily. I do have criticisms. Don't get me wrong, but I don't feel like this game sucks or anything yet. I say, almost like I'm expecting it to suck at some point. But it's not giving me the I don't have strong emotions coming out of playing this game so far. Like Borderlands 3, that game is very cringe. It's just extremely cringe. It was a game made by a company that was trying way too hard to be funny in their video game. And while Borderlands has always had an element of that, Borderlands 2, which, I've replayed recently this year, definitely had some elements of a company, trying too hard to be funny, but a lot more of the jokes land in Borderlands 2 than they ever did in 3. And I think Borderlands 3, and this is funny actually to think about because, playing Death Stranding, Kojima has a little bit of this as well. Actually, a lot more of this than Borderlands ever did. But Borderlands 3 was a game full of, there were some famous names in that game randomly. Like Penn and Teller famously are in the game it just felt like a game that was trying to be cool and wanted you to know how cool it was, and how fucking funny it was. And it and how in on the joke it was on streamers and everything, and it just really didn't hit home for me. And this resulted in me not wanting to play that game very much. And I will say playing 4 has made me think a little bit deeper about 3 and reevaluate my feelings on it a little bit. And I still stand by my feelings on the story and plot and whatnot and the narrative of the game, that it is an obnoxious part of the game. I severely dislike it. But I did think about a little bit more my feelings on the Vault Hunters in that game, because I played Zane. He was the main one I played. And I played a little bit of the robot. I'm forgetting his name. The one that had the fucking pet or whatever. I played a very little amount of him. So I mostly played Zane. And I came out of the game feeling like the Vault Hunters were not very fun in their design, and to be fair, I didn't play them all, and I probably should have acknowledged that more if I haven't, but that's kind of why I'm thinking about this a little bit more. It makes me wonder that I think Zane in particular might not have been my cup of tea in that game, and it's making me wonder if I had played a different character, would I have a different opinion of Borderlands 3 from a design standpoint and gameplay standpoint. And the answer to that very well could be yes. And I don't know if I ever will go back to it and try it again, given that Borderlands 4 is out and there's still parts of Borderlands 2 I want to experience fully. I don't know if I'll ever find myself going back to that game necessarily, but playing Borderlands 4 is definitely making me think about that game, though, and kind of reevaluate things, because I do feel like with 4, the Vault Hunters feel like they're better designed so far. I'm not an end game yet. I haven't beaten the main playthrough or anything like that, so I don't have a full picture of what the game's balance and design looks like, later on. But so far, I'll say I'm having fun. I'm enjoying the game. Playing co-op. I've never played Borderlands co-op really beyond. I played with my brother. Played Borderlands 2 with my brother a long time ago, and we got through. I think we did 2 playthroughs, actually. We did a normal run and then a true Vault Hunter mode run, which takes you to about level 50. And we got to Ultimate Vault Hunter mode, and then we fell off because Ultimate Vault Hunter mode is fucking insane in Borderlands 2. So we ended up falling off and didn't do that. So that's my only co-op experience playing Borderlands, though, in my history with the series. So playing 4 co-op has been a lot of fun so far, and it's cool to experience the game, one of the games like this, because I think this is where the game is in its natural form, is playing co-op, playing with other people. I definitely get the vibe that that's really what their intent is. When you're playing solo, the game, while 4 so far doesn't have this feel, but 2 has this feel, and 3 to some extent has this feel as well. When you're playing by yourself, it can become very difficult to progress sometimes, because the game certain characters are designed in such a way where they don't play well solo until you get to a certain point in their skill trees. And that's kind of always been a conceit of Borderlands that unfortunately can be a big turnoff when you hit that wall where your character's not effective enough to kill the enemies that you are on level for one reason or another. It can become a very frustrating gameplay experience where you are just constantly dying. You're not killing anything, and even if you are killing things, you're not getting any loot from it, because most enemies don't drop a ton of loot in the game, and that is that's always been a problem in Borderlands. So I think playing in co-op, it feels natural. The game feels very good in this state. I will say one of the awkward things about it in 4, and I don't know how the other games handle this, is one of the players is inherently the host of the game, and everything keys off of their game world inherently. So when Jet joins me, so far it's been using my game world for progression. So if you're not lined up with the person you're playing with, you're not able to tell, because Jet was telling me that he sees the quest that I have active. So if he didn't complete something but I did, he doesn't see that quest that he didn't complete, because I completed it in my world, and my world is like the master world or whatever. So That's kind of an interesting quirk. Don't love that. I don't really know how they fix that though. I was kind of thinking about it, and it's like, I don't know how you fix that kind of thing necessarily. It's, somebody, there has to be a master world based on somebody, so it makes sense that it's the host. But so that's kind of a weird element to the game. But cool part is drops are instanced in this game. I think that was true in 3 as well. I think 2, it wasn't true, and that was a problem in that game. Basically everybody got the same loot drops, and if somebody, like, say a legendary dropped and one person picked it up, that was theirs and nobody else got it. In this game it's instanced, so everybody gets their own share of the loot, and that's cool. I think that works pretty well. But outside of co-op, game design wise, they made this game an open world, which is new for Borderlands. Borderlands 1, 2, and 3 have never been open world, really. They've been zone-based games where you have these kind of big zones that are all connected to each other, and there's loading screens between each zone, obviously. And that when you connect that together, that creates a world, but it's not open world in that way. So that's always been the way Borderlands has been. So the game now being open world, this transition to open world is I don't know. I feel like online I haven't really seen a ton of opinion about this. Most of what I've seen has been fairly positive. I have seen some negativity, but I don't think this is a huge topic for the game, at least so far. But for me, I think the open world mostly works. I think the game, they give you a vehicle pretty early on, so you're not on foot running around, super slow from area to area, so that they don't waste any time with that. I think that works pretty well. The issue with the game from the open world standpoint is the Borderlands area design is still very similar to the way it used to be, where it's a lot of, there's kind of an open area you run around in, but then when you get to your objective, it tends to be kind of like a linear tunnel that you go through. And there's like one way through that linear tunnel. They still do that here in the open world. So you end up getting a lot of situations where you're running towards a destination, right? And you hit the enemy fortress. That's the giant story place for the zone, or one of the story areas for the zone. And you can't get around said fortress or go through said fortress because there's only one entry point. The one entry point that kicks the quest off, and it's like, so the game doesn't give you, like, the open world's not designed in a way where it gives you like shortcuts through these things, so you can't like get around them per se. You end up having to take very linear paths to travel sometimes, and I don't think it's super well designed as an open world. It is their first attempt at it, so I can give them a little grace here, but it is a little frustrating when me and Jet were trying to travel across the first zone. We had a quest that kind of made us go from one end to the other, and traveling from said one end to the other sucked because you see the direction you're supposed to go on your compass, so you're kind of following that, right, like vaguely, and then you end up in a fucking river that falls down. Like there's like a waterfall, and you like go down the waterfall, and you can't get up because the way you went is not designed for you to go back up the mountain that you fell down, so you end up driving around, and then you hit the out of bounds, and the game kills you and respawns you at some fast travel station. And it just doesn't feel like a really great open world. It's not open like there's a lot of restrictiveness to it, and I think that's a kind of an issue. I mean, we'll see with the second 2 zones, like if it gets better as the game goes on, which would be very interesting if that's the case. But at least in the Fade Fields, I feel like the design is very restrictive, I guess I should say, because they did add this movement mechanic, a couple of them, where you can actually glide now. So you get this like glide pack where you'll jump off something, and if you hit X again, you'll start gliding in whatever direction you're facing, and that allows you to traverse certain areas that you normally might not be able to. They also added a grapple hook in the game as well, but the issue with the grapple, and I think I don't know I don't know what they're in. I don't know if they ever tried this, right? They might have tried this during dev potentially, but the grapple is only allowed to grapple onto certain things. Like it is hard coded to grapple onto certain objects, right? There are like things on the ground you can pick up with it, which is a really nice feature. But there are also points in the air that are like attached to a wall or something. That's like a grapple point, and it allows you to grapple up onto that platform or whatever that it's attached to, which is fine for traversal. It feels pretty good for the most part, but it's not free form. So basically, you can't grapple onto anything and swing around, and there aren't like grapple physics or anything like that. It's just like a very set animation that happens, and you travel to the place that's hard coded for you to travel to, right? So it's cool and interesting in some respect, but it's really frustrating that it allows you to scale certain things, but only the things they've put grapple points on. So if you're under a cliff, say, you can't grapple above the cliff with the grapple hook, because there's no grapple point, and it's like, it doesn't feel super, it's not dynamic, right? It's not a dynamic thing. So I don't think it's changing the gameplay all that much. It's kind of just a thing. I actually think the way they use it in combat encounters, where you can pick up like gas tanks and like cryo tanks and throw them at enemies, is a little bit more interesting than what they do with it for traversal purposes. So at least that's there. But I do think that it's not used as well as it necessarily could be in the game. So yeah. Open world is, it's okay. It's not horrible or anything like that. So I don't think the transition has been terrible here. I will say they do tend to, so, there's side quests and there's collectibles that you can collect. And when you get near some of these collectibles, they'll kind of pop up on your map in the menu, and they'll tell you where they are, like relatively on the map. I will say the map is a flat 2D map. Not very helpful in some cases. Because the game has a lot of verticality to it, so I don't really understand why games continue to do this type of thing with maps. Like, they don't put any effort into making their map; they just make it a drawing. It would be very helpful if the map was like, kind of a dynamic thing. You can move around and you can see elevation on it and whatnot. But they didn't do that here, so a lot of the time the game will put like a fucking echo on your map, because you drove by it, and then you'll go up to it, and it's like, oh, it's 30 meters above you, and you're like, okay, I mean, how do I get up there? Then there's no obvious path to get to it, so you just kind of wander around until you figure out where the grapple point might be, or, what cave you have to go in 300 meters away to get all the way up to find it. It's a little annoying in that respect as well. So the, and there's a lot of collectibles actually. I think they put a large number in the game, and it's cool. So the map has a lot to do. There's a lot of side quests in the game as well. I just think the way I think this is something Borderlands has always struggled with a little bit, though, is I feel like the game doesn't, because like the side quests start in all sorts of random places. This isn't designed like an MMO where you just have like these quest hubs, which frankly, I'm gonna be honest, like I would probably prefer in this situation, because the way the game ends up being is you're kind of running around, you see a collectible, you go do it, and then, oh, there's a quest 100 meters away, and you go to the quest, and you pick it up, and then you follow the quest to completion, and then while you were doing that quest, you ran by another one that's, halfway back to where you started, and you got to go over there and get that one, and then that one sends you back south where you came from, and, and then there's another one. It's like, it's just very like A to B to C to D, and it's like, I would prefer if I could just get all these quests in the same place and then run around and do them all, basically, and then go turn them all in. Like, I know that's like too streamlined for some people, but in the case of Borderlands, I am not looking for deep and immersive side quest design necessarily. They're vehicles for me to get experience, loot, and currency. That's what side quests are to me in these games. And, sometimes they're funny, and sometimes they have a little story that's funny or whatever, and that's kind of how they want you to experience these side quests. But I would say largely, for the most part, Borderlands is not, people aren't coming to Borderlands for that, and I think it would be a lot more player-friendly if they did it in a more hub-based way. And you don't have to do full hub, right? some of the quests can be off in the middle of buttfuck nowhere and whatever, but it's just annoying how many there are, because like Jet and I have done a ton in our playthrough so far in the first area in the Fade Fields, and as you do more main quests, more side quests open up as a result, and you end up with this like, man, the map is just so full of shit. It's like I feel like I've done a bunch of it already, and it's just there's more and more and more. It's like I almost feel like they're like too busy packing too much into these zones. It's like I don't want to be in the Fade Fields for 30 hours before I move on to the next area, and maybe I'm too completionist. I kind of am. I kind of tend to be that way, but dude, it's like, I don't know. It's just a little frustrating. So yeah, there's that as well. I do think so getting back to the Vault Hunters are the ones that I played are cool. The two that I played so far, I played the Soldier, Rafa, and then I played the Siren Vex as well. And with Rafa, I'm doing the Phase Blades melee build with him, where his action skill is he just pulls out these like 2 Phase Blades and runs around and melees everybody, and stuff like that. That skill is very cool. It is fun. It is a little wonky to control because you go third person and you still have a crosshair, so you have to aim before you hit the melee button, and that's where Rafa will go. So if you're like just spamming melee attack and you're not moving your camera with it, you're going to end up like zooming. You're going to hit an enemy with the first couple attacks, and then you're going to zoom right past them and be behind them all of a sudden, because you still have to aim, when you're in this mode. So there's a little bit of awkwardness to it. But it's kind of cool though. At the same time, there's some skill element there as well. That's kind of cool. And it actually is really cool to see your character in third person. This is something that Borderlands, at least, I don't know if 3 ever did this with Amara or whatever, but I've never seen them do the third person thing with any of the characters for the most part with their action skills. So that's cool that's in the game. And then with Vex, I've been doing the pet build with the saber, whatever, the tiger creature that she summons, which is cool. I will say the pet so far feels pretty good. Actually, you have like because you like the pet's always, it's actually interesting the way it works. Instead of being like the Necromancer or Axton in the first game, the pet is always summoned once you select that action skill as your action skill. And when you press the action skill button, it actually just powers the pet up. It turns it into like a badass equivalent unit, monster, basically. And then you can activate it again after you've activated it, and the creature, like the pet, will have another skill associated with pressing the button. And in my case right now, it's like a blink strike. So it'll be like, it could be like 50 yards away, and I can hit it, and it'll teleport to the enemy I'm aiming at and swipe at them, and start attacking them, which is kind of cool. So there's some depth there with this particular skill, and I think in general their design with the skill trees is a very interesting approach this time. They have made the skill trees very large for each action skill, which Borderlands 3, I don't remember them being particularly small, but they weren't this huge. This is like, it's a very interesting change for them, because it's conceivable that you will put all your points into a single skill tree in this game now. Like you'll take Rafa's Phase Blades, and you will put every skill point you have into his Phase Blade tree. That is a very conceivable thing, it feels like now, because that's how big the trees are. They have like a kind of an upper section that has a bunch of like generalist skills that you'll start with, and then it splits into 3 underneath that have these like all 3. So there's 3 different capstones for each action skill, basically, that you can spec into. And all of those are going to be different builds, essentially, in the game. And I think it's very interesting how they've done this, because in 2 in particular, especially by the end with all the DLC, and like I think you can get to level 82 or some crazy shit in Borderlands 2, you can basically fill out all 3 skill trees for every character, almost. I think it's like 1 point off from being able to get the end cap in all 3 of them, basically. So it's very different in this game. Extra skill points will be interesting to see how they impact the meta for these characters, but that will probably enable you to side spec into others' trees, because there are useful skills in all the trees for each spec, right? So that's fine, but I think it's kind of cool to see this. I think they're really trying to expand the kind of customizability of the characters in this game, and they don't want everyone to be homogenized into the same build, which was kind of a problem in like Borderlands 2, for instance. I think that game, a lot of the characters kind of tended towards very similar skill loadouts, generally speaking. So I think that's a cool change. I'm actually excited by it because there's a lot to explore with the skill trees. I think the characters you could play the same character very differently, from 4 other people. And I think all 4, like if there's 5 of you all playing Rafa, I think you could all be playing Rafa in a very different way from each other. So I think that's cool. I think that's a good change, and I think it's a good direction for the series, for sure. So I'm kind of excited to see how that builds out. There is more customization stuff too later on that I haven't gotten access to yet because we're still low level. So I'm looking forward to seeing what some of that looks like in the game as well. But the last thing I want to talk about here, and I think this is probably the big thing people want to hear about coming off of 3, is how is the story? Where 3 was a giant cringe fest and had some of the worst villains I've ever seen in a game, 4 is, man, this is like Star Wars The Last Jedi, and then the reaction that Disney had to that, where they went as far away from that as humanly possible with The Last Jedi. It's kind of like that here. Whereas Borderlands 3 is the game that's like annoying and pisses everybody off and has a terrible story and terrible villains. Borderlands 4, kind of takes us back. It doesn't retcon anything, so it's not as bad as like Rise of Skywalker, but it is a reaction though to that game, in the sense that this game is so much more, Randy used the word grounded, and I would say almost like safe is the word I would use. Like, the villain is very straight-laced in this game. There's no humor to him whatsoever. And I'd say the presentation of the story so far in the Fadefield Zone is very straight. Like, there's not a lot of Borderlands zaniness in it so far. And I've heard this described as bland, and that is the word I would probably use myself with how I feel about it so far. The story is it's presented in a very straight way. The characters you meet are not wacky, kooky, Borderlands characters. They're very like, one of the guys you meet, his name's Rush. He's like he's like the resistance leader, and, he cares about everybody. And, it's like he loves protein bars for some fucking reason. He's played as a very like, oh, I care about everybody, I don't want to lose anyone type character. And he's played very straight. And I'm going to be honest, like, it is not hitting right now. I am kind of blown away at how boring this game's story is. Like, it is painfully boring. Like to the point that I literally don't care about any of the characters I've met so far. And they made a very distinct decision, and I don't know how long this goes on for, but at least up through level 20 in the first zone, like, besides Claptrap, I have not met any character from a previous Borderlands game. And that is certainly a choice. And there are certain characters that are mega annoying, that were awful in 3 and no one wants to see again. I'm forgetting the name of that fucking siren girl that was like Maya's apprentice or whatever in 3. Excuse me. Oh, I'm sorry. I really dislike that character. Many people did. And, so we're not running into those characters quite yet or anything like that. No Lilith, no Tannis or anybody like that. So, that is certainly a choice. I don't know how much, like I said, I don't know how much longer it goes on. We'll see. I will just say through the first, what I call third, of the story is extremely boring and not very interesting so far. It's kind of just there. Which is a little disappointing, because it's not like they've been incapable of writing interesting stories in Borderlands. Borderlands 2 famously, always had, it's not like, don't get me wrong, I don't want to overblow it. It's not Shakespeare or anything like that. But at least, it's a fun romp. There's a good villain. There are stakes, there are consequences to things in that game. And, so they don't have that feeling here as much. These guys are just, the bad guys are just bad guys. It's like, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, they're so bland that it's like, they don't have any defining characteristics other than they're like the bad guys, it's like I'm thinking of like one of the lieutenants, like the main lieutenant in the first area. And he just kind of like is like this incompetent giant fat guy. And he's like yelling at you like, oh, you're ruining everything. Oh, you're the worst Vault Hunter. Oh, and then I don't know, like you fight him and you beat him and it's just like, all right, bro. Like, yeah, it sucks to suck. I don't know. There's just not a lot to it. It did not feel super great. So, and even with the side quests, I'm going to be honest, like this is something, because the side quests in Borderlands have had there've been some funny ones over the years. Right. And in this game, there was one where like a missile landed in a town, like an NPC town. And you talk to the missile core and it like has a personality and talks to you and stuff. And is like, that's like quest chain. And it wants to find out if it's a dud or not. Like it thinks it's a dud. So the whole quest is you like rebuilding a rocket to put it in to see if it goes off and explodes, basically. And the whole time I'm sitting there like, you're building the rocket and then you set it up and it's actually above the town. It's relatively close to the town up on a cliff. And I'm sitting there like, and I was talking to Jed about this and I was like, normal Borderlands, like I don't know what this game is going to do totally, but like normal Borderlands is you would shoot this rocket off and it would go blow up the town. Like that would be the side quest in like Borderlands 2, for instance. That's how it would play out. And the rocket like had expressed like caring for the villagers and stuff and liked hearing their problems. So there was like an establishment of like a rapport there or whatever. And then, normally Borderlands would just upend that and the rocket kills everybody. And it's like, well, that doesn't feel great. Oh, well, let's move on, And like, that's the joke, that would be the joke. But in this game, you put the rocket together and then you shoot the rocket into the sky and then it just explodes and fireworks come out of it. And that's the end of the quest. It's just like, okay, I mean, all right. Like you wrote a story, I guess. Like, it's like, there's nothing there. There's just not a lot going on there. So I don't know. I'm being a little hard on it, but it's, that's definitely how I feel so far. I'm not playing this game for the story right now. It is a gameplay game and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. There doesn't have to be a riveting narrative for every game you play, right? Especially Borderlands. So it's okay. But so yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with Borderlands 4 right now. I'm going to keep playing it here going forward, and I'll have more thoughts next week on it. So, all right, I'm going to take a drink of water. Okay. All right. That was a lot of talking. Going to go into the next game that I've been playing, which is Death Stranding 2. Still playing this. I actually just beat it earlier today over my lunch. And, man, I kind of have some complicated feelings about this game. This is interesting. I am landing in a weird spot because I've played Death Stranding 1 and 2 back to back, and I never played Death Stranding 1 before this. So I don't have context coming in or anything like that, how I felt about the game in 2020 or playing it over the pandemic or anything like that. I don't have any association with it really. So playing through the first one, and Montrell and I did a spoiler cast, and if you guys listen to that, you definitely would have heard some criticisms of the game. There were some issues with it, particularly story pacing problems in certain segments of the story that were not fun to experience, right? But overall, I think it's a really special game. And there's a tone there that is really somber and lonely, and the game kind of has a vibe to it, that is really well realized, I feel like. And Death Stranding 2 doesn't have that, and that's deliberate in some ways. I think Kojima very deliberately wanted to tell a different story with the second game, and he did in some ways. I think there was some interview he did where he talked about that this game is much more about the stick than the rope. The game mentions the stick a lot in the later part of the game. So this game is much more about conflict and, coming into conflict with others, and that's kind of the byline of the game. I think it might be on the box, is like, should we have connected, is like the question or whatever. And there's a lot of conflict around in the game, in the story or whatever. And I think at the end of the game, the tone definitely does not work for me the way it worked in the first game. Obviously, the somber, lonely element to the game is gone for the most part. You are much more with people. There are other people with you constantly. I'm going to try not to spoil too much here. But I just feel like the game didn't tell its story very effectively, and there is just some weird elements to it in terms of structure in particular, where this game's story is structured in a very similar way to Death Stranding 1 in some ways, where it's almost telling very like similar story beats, and also putting like I like, for instance, this is a minor spoiler, but in the first game you had those like Clifford episodes where you'd go into like some beach that was like a representation of like World War I or World War II or Vietnam or something, and you fight Clifford's like squad in like a pseudo memory type situation or whatever. And for some reason, Kojima decided to do the same exact thing with this game with another character. And, that character, what they do with that character ultimately makes sense, and I don't really hate it as a whole, but I think the decision to mirror that kind of, memory combat structure, like fighting within a memory type thing, was very weird choice. It didn't hit the same way the Clifford things hit. And I just don't think it worked here as well. And then also I think like thematically, there's very similar beats in the early portion of the game, and Sam goes on a similar journey in a lot of ways that he did in the first game. And I don't know why we did that. It didn't. I don't know. I'm hoping Montrell plays this game to completion, because I'm gonna be curious what he thinks. If he has similar feelings to me with this, because there are some aspects to the story that worked well for me. I think the villain, who ends up being the primary villain in the game, works pretty well. But there are other villains that don't work that well in the game, and I'm puzzled by the way they were handled in some ways. And I think some of the characters were dealt some short shrift as well in the plot, and I don't know why that is. So I come away a little unsatisfied with the story. I think Death Stranding 1 told a better story. I think Death Stranding 1 told it not necessarily in a better way, but had a tone that was much more in line with said story, and it worked really well. This game's tone is like all over the place. There's like, kind of a very depressing side of the game, and then there's a lot of like upbeat, hopeful type stuff though that like doesn't fit per se with what's going on, on the other end. So I don't know. Without going into spoilers, I can't go much deeper than that on story, but that's kind of how I feel about it. And then the gameplay is, you're going to hear a lot of people, I'm sure I'm 3 months late to the party with this game, right? So, you guys have probably heard all the reviews already and everything, but I've heard a lot of this type of quote where it's better than Death Stranding 1 in every way, and I just don't agree with that. I really just don't agree with that. And I think Death Stranding 2 is almost like cautionary tale in some ways, because the main gameplay of like delivering packages and traversing the environment and, the mule camps and the BT areas and stuff, that all makes a return, right, in the game. And largely, if you watch the game in motion, you're not going to notice anything, right, over a short period of time. But playing the whole game, Death Stranding 2 is like, it's just off. The balance of the game is off. And I think the game is like super, super fucking easy. Like to the point of like boredom, and I don't know if that was a deliberate choice to get more people into the game, to get newer players to feel comfortable with the game. But I think, like, I guess let me just go through each aspect of it. So, like, just your basic travel, where, like, Sam's just walking through an environment, right? They've... I don't know how else to say this, but they've, like, dumbed it down or streamlined it to the point that it is not engaging, They designed a lot of the environments in a way where there are straight line paths between shelters, and there isn't a lot of thought needed to get from point A to point B. A lot of the time, you kind of just walk towards the shelter, and there's just literally a path that's super easy to climb, or not even climb, like walk up. There's no weird terrain to go through, A lot of the time you can avoid rivers, in BT zones and mule camps. You can kind of just walk around them, and you're not really forced to engage with them unless it's a combat mission. And it kind of results in this gameplay loop where it's like, because, like people are going to sit here and say, right, the first game, like, it wasn't that hard either. And it wasn't, but I just feel like the weightiness of Sam and his balance and everything is too strong in this game. It's like weird. It's off, I like once you get your first skeleton, the battle skeleton, when you first get to Australia, like the game just becomes like mega easy from that point forward. And I feel like it just gets easier and easier the more you play the game. It never really changes. And it's kind of disappointing because like the first game, I remember, I complained about this in the spoiler cast, but I'm almost like nostalgic for it now. Is like the eastern zone and the first zone in the first game is a pain in the ass because every stretch of it, and like there will be, there's like a central distro in that zone, right? And every direction you go, there's like a BT zone or a mule camp, and you cannot get to the next area without going through one of those. So they intentionally put these barriers in front of you to make the game, at least have some amount of challenge and difficulty to it. And you have to be thoughtful of how you get through those zones, right? In Death Stranding 2, the landmass is so wide and large that a lot of the time you can go around these things with no repercussions whatsoever, and you don't even have to think about it, and there's just not like a reason to go through them. And I think a lot of the time Death Stranding 1 put you in situations where you were forced to go through a BT area, and or they forced you to go through a mule camp to go to a certain location. Like it would hit a choke point and they'd have their camp in the choke point, or like it would be a BT area in a choke point, and you couldn't go through, travel through that area without going through those. And there was a challenge to that. But it's not even just that. I think the moment to moment of just walking around the environment's designed in such a way that it's very easy to traverse. Like there's just not a lot of challenging terrain in the game. Whereas in the first game, there are whole areas that are such a pain in the fucking ass to get through, whether it's on foot or with a vehicle. And you have to go through them multiple times. It's all like often you'll have to do sub orders through them, and I just feel like this game doesn't have a lot of that. It's very simple. to traverse. And once you get the truck, in particular in this game, and I feel like the truck was very potent in the first game. Don't get me wrong, right? It definitely was. I used the truck a lot in the first game, but I feel like here in the second game, the truck is fucking like mega overpowered. Like it can traverse everything, like every area in the entire game, like on the entire world map, the truck can get through, and it creates this kind of situation where you don't have to walk anywhere once you get the truck, and you kind of don't, and then the game's just kind of like driving. You're just driving around, you know? And the like going further here with the BT zones and mule camps, the way they designed, in particular, let's just go with the BT zones first. In the first game, BT zones were a pain in the ass. BTs were everywhere in these zones. You couldn't walk in any direction for 15 feet and not run into a fucking BT. They were everywhere. Like, it was a real stealth area. Like, you had to be stealthy, or you needed the the enhancement to like cut the umbilical cord or whatever in order to get through these zones. And in Death Stranding 2, they redesigned the BT zones. They're different. They created these BTs that are like watchers is what they're called. And they're basically these giant, the Phantom-like BT form, but they have like these glowing yellow eyes, and they're like looking around now, like looking for you, basically, or looking for people, essentially. And they're so sparsely put into the BT zones that you can literally, and I did this in the game, by the way, so like I'm speaking from experience. You can literally just drive a truck, and if you're careful and pay attention to the direction that they are in relative to you, there's so much space between them that you can drive a truck around all of them in these zones and not even get caught. A fucking truck, dude, like a truck, an actual vehicle. Whereas in the first game, if you drove a trike or the truck through a BT zone, you weren't getting 5 feet in before they grabbed you and the tar came out and they took you to the middle and you fucking spawned a BT. So those changes are just like, even the zones themselves, like even when you do have to go through a BT zone, it's just fucking mega easy, and there's just not a lot of thought process to it. And I feel, and the mules are the same, the mules, like, I mean, this was true in the first game too. Actually, not as much though, now that I'm thinking about it. Because you can just drive a truck through the mule camps, barely even fucking worry about it. The only thing you have to worry about is later on, there are these like mole mine traps or whatever that like will pop out of the ground and they'll run at your truck. And if they hit you, they'll like knock you out of the truck or whatever, and damage the truck big time. Those are certainly dangerous, but in the first game, like the enemies, like mules, would like throw their like electric spears at you, and they do that in this game too, but they just apparently suck at it. In the first game, it was a lot more common where they would throw their spear at me, and it would either hit my truck and cause me to stop because I'm, it's getting shocked, or it would hit the ground in front of me, and then I would run into it because I didn't have time to move out of the way, and it would make me stop. So even the mules are like easier in this game as well. And I don't know. It's weird. It's kind of a weird thing to explain, but it's just like they made the game a lot easier, and as a result, it's just not as satisfying to play. You don't feel that satisfaction of actually completing your delivery because the delivery wasn't hard to complete. I just put everything in the truck and I drove to the place, and there you go. It's like, and while like you'll say you could do the same thing in Death Stranding 1. While, yes, that is true, and yeah, you could build roads in Death Stranding 1 as well, building the roads took a huge amount of effort in Death Stranding 1, and it was super rewarding to build those roads and have them available for you to just drive your truck around. That was like an accomplishment that you achieved as a player. Whereas in Death Stranding 2, you don't need roads at all. They're there, you can build them, and you can build these monorails, but I found no reason to build the roads because, and I'm still going to do it in post-game, like I plan on doing it all and everything, but there's just not an incentive to do it because the off-roader's so good at traversing terrain. Like, it's not, like in the first game, traversing rocky terrain or the mountain with the truck was nearly impossible. It wasn't, like, you could get good enough at it that you can kind of do it, but it was still difficult to do, and a lot of the time you would be going, you would kind of, if you're off-roading, you might hit a BT zone and dude, the truck's fucked. You can't get the truck through the BT zone, and stuff like that. So, and those situations just aren't happening in Death Stranding 2, or didn't happen for me in Death Stranding 2, really almost at all. And I don't know, it's a little frustrating. It's disappointing because I think the first game, again, that tone was there, but also just the design of the deliveries and stuff was better, in my opinion. And I think it was just a lot more interesting to play. It's weird. I don't even know, man. Like, I just feel like the environment was much more of a threat in the first game, And in this game, it's just not a threat. It just feels like I'm playing like, I don't know, I'm playing like fucking The Witcher or something, and I'm just, like riding my horse is just a mode of transport to get me from point A to point B. There's nothing interesting that's going to happen, through the environment in those situations. It's like, that's kind of how Death Stranding 2 feels, which is really disappointing because that's not how Death Stranding 1 felt. Death Stranding 1 felt like the environment was your enemy. Like, that was what you were struggling against in the game, was traveling up that hill, and you don't have you have a shitload of cargo on you, and Sam's like fucking lost half his stamina and he's like mega tired, and it's just like these situations you would get in where you would have to grind through it or figure out a clever way to get out of it, or you might have a player thing that comes and you run into and bails you out, like a zip line or something. Whereas in Death Stranding 2, I didn't have any of that, because the game was just, I think the only time it ever happened after the early game, once I got the truck, was like when you first go into the mountains. There's definitely some mountain deliveries in this game, and those are moderately challenging, because you don't have a zip line network set up yet. But then, like, when you do some of the mountain deliveries, they give you these tires, these like gripping tires that allow you to traverse the mountains with the truck. So the truck just becomes this like all defeating vehicle that is like can defeat all terrain in the game. And it's just like, I don't know. And I mean, people would say like, oh, well then don't play with the truck. But it's like, well, dude, I mean, it's path of least resistance, bro. I'm not going to make the game a pain in the ass for myself just cause, it's like that. Like that's I kind of always hate that argument, right? And I think this is exactly why, like this situation I'm talking about is exactly why Dark Souls and those games have a single difficulty, because they force you to adhere to what their design was, So it's like, I shouldn't have to make the game harder for myself to have the fun I want to have. I can choose to do that, and I've done that in games before. It's just like, but here, I didn't feel the need to do it, and I was waiting for the game to get harder, and it never did. And it's like, that's not my fault, it's like, it's just, I don't know. So it's like, I'm sighing a lot, and I think I sound disappointed in the game probably. And I am definitely disappointed in the game. I'm not going to sit here and say the game's bad. It's not. Okay. This is still a great game. It is a lesser game than Death Stranding 1 in a lot of ways, I think, despite the fact that I think from a gameplay standpoint, it is vastly improved in most ways. Like, Sam controls better, combat's better, controlling weapons is better, shooting things is better. There's more options with the weapons and stuff and all that, and that's great and all. There's more guns, But I think that's another aspect of the game that I'm not like digging as much, though, is this tonal shift to combat. This game is very, very, very combat heavy. Like, really combat heavy. Like, it's insane how much combat there is in the game compared to Death Stranding 1, which did force a lot of combat. But I think in Death Stranding 1, like, the game, when you were out and about and traveling and stuff, the game really encouraged you, I feel like, through gameplay systems, to not fight things, to not fight those mule camps, to not fight BTs, to kind of avoid these things, because I think some people might point to the fact that the combat was bad in Death Stranding 1 as a reason why that was the case. And maybe that's true, but I think it lent to the tone of the game that Sam's a porter first. He's not a fucking special ops, military guy or anything. Like, he's not running around like fucking trying to destroy entire mule camps or whatever and kill every BT he runs into. No, he's a delivery guy. That's his job. That's what he wants to do. And I think in the second game, he becomes much more of that, like, military fucking shooter dude, and it's like, it doesn't work for me as much. And I love that in the first game that combat was kind of discouraged. I feel like that's a really unique thing in video games, like games are always about fighting. Like combat is a crutch for the video game industry. It really is. Like that in games that do not make you fight are so few and far between, and I appreciate a game that almost like has a bit of a commentary on that, almost like subtly, and also just doesn't encourage combat in its gameplay loop. It has it there. You can engage with it if you want, but you're going to be most rewarded by not engaging with it. And I love that in the first game. And I think in this game, it's the total opposite. You are encouraged to fight at every opportunity, and you can blow camps away, dude. Like you just get all sorts of crazy shit in this game. And I think that's the other problem with the game is that the AI is like, this is the thing. They improved the gunplay, but they didn't improve the enemy AI with the game. So like the first game had terrible enemy AI too, but it was fine because you weren't really trying to fight that much. But this game's like telling you to fight all the time, and the enemies are morons. Like, dude, it's like you can literally on normal, you can literally just stand in the middle of a giant field of enemies all shooting at you and barely move, and you can just go pop, 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 while they're all firing at you, and you'll be totally fine and you'll win those fights. Like, the game is not difficult from a combat standpoint. So you're just like, it's not mega engaging there either, despite the emphasis on it. And the emphasis on it is a disappointment for me as well. It's just, I don't know, man. It's, again, I'm being really negative. I really am. But, after, it's only been a few hours, I guess several hours since I finished it, and I've been thinking about it a lot. And I maybe I'll have some different thoughts, next week or, whenever Montrell finishes the game and we can kind of talk through it again. But, again, I don't think it's a bad game. I don't think it's, I kind of think this is a negative, not negative, but it's kind of a disappointment for Kojima, as a follow-up to Death Stranding 1, where I think Death Stranding 1 was a really bold game, and really took a lot of risks in the way it was designed. And I think this game is like a step back in that regard. It's just not, it's not at the same level. I think Kojima might have listened to the critics a little too much of the first game, where that people saying it was boring and it wasn't engaging enough and stuff like that. And I think a little of the magic was lost with some of these changes. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. It's I'm still planning to get the platinum in it. I want to finish it off, and because I haven't really engaged with the sub orders and stuff in the game, like trying to get 5 stars on all the locations. I haven't really engaged with that yet deeply in this game. The way this game is structured, it kind of encourages you to mainline it a little bit more than the first game did. So I'm gonna get a little deeper on it. So I'll have more to say next week when I start doing some of that stuff. But that's kind of where I'm at with it. So yeah, Death Stranding 2. It's good game, but not quite up to what I was hoping for from the sequel. So, all right, that's it for what I've been playing. I'm gonna take a drink here real quick. All right, and get into the news story for the week, which is a Nintendo Direct happened last week. I'll probably talk to Montrell next week as well, get his thoughts on this if there's anything interesting for him here. But yeah, so there was a lot in here. I think Nintendo, there was a lot for Mario's 40th anniversary. They had a lot of announcements there. They announced a Super Mario Galaxy movie, which is going to be a follow-up to the movie they did a couple years ago. Chris Pratt's returning, Jack Black, etc. All the all the people from the first movie are coming back, but this is going to be in the Galaxy, I don't know, universe or whatever you want to call it. And so that's cool. Looks like it's coming next year as well, so there's not a huge amount of time to wait necessarily for it, but I think it could be a fun movie. I think the first one was pretty fun as well. And then they announced Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 are coming to Switch and Switch 2, which is funny because Galaxy 1's already on the Switch. This was a game that was released as part of I forget what it was bundled with, but I want to say it was Sunshine and something else. Maybe Mario. It might have been Mario 64. A couple years ago as well, and they're re-releasing it again, and Super Mario Galaxy 2. Now, I will say that version was only temporarily available, I believe. Like it wasn't. You can't go buy it now. So that is one thing to note here. But it is funny that they are actually re-releasing this game, and it looks like they did some things with Galaxy. Did some upscaling and kind of, made the game look a little prettier and made a couple changes here. So there's a little work into this one, I think, a little bit more than the first one, but it's just, I don't know. It's like they're like re-releasing games that they've already re-released, and they're doing the things that people complain they didn't do the first time, but then they're charging full price for it again. And it's, I don't know. It's one of those things, like, I might end up buying this because I love Galaxy 1 and I've never played Galaxy 2, so I think it would actually be kind of fun to go through those again. But I just think it's like it's really funny that they're doing this and they just kind of get away with it. It's like, I mean, they're Nintendo. They do what they want. People eat it up, so I'm sure it'll sell very well. But yeah, so that's coming on the 2nd of October as well, so it's a couple weeks out. So yeah, that'll be cool. Then they had Mario Tennis Fever that they showed, a new Mario Tennis game. I did love Mario Tennis at one time. Unfortunately, it's just not something I want to play by myself though. So, I don't really have a lot to say here, but it is coming in February next year, February 12th, in fact. Then they showed Mario Brothers Wonder is getting some sort of, it's getting a Switch 2 Enhanced Edition, and it's going to have more content in it. It's coming in spring 2026. So that's cool. And then they announced a new Yoshi game, Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, which this looks like, it's got some Yoshi's Island vibes, for sure. It's kind of got the, I don't know if this is like stop motion style, look and feel to it, but it looks pretty cool. I'm actually kind of interested in it. I always liked Yoshi's Story from back in the day on the N64. So that's interesting as well. And this game is coming, when did they say it's coming? Spring 2026. So also coming next year. So that certainly looks interesting. And then what else? We had a bunch of like smaller things. Nothing I'm really super interested in here. They did show Hades 2, which is finally getting an official release date. And it is going to be available next week on September 25th, with the physical version coming on November 20th. So this is really exciting. Hades 2 is finally coming out, full release. It is not coming to PlayStation or Xbox yet. So if you want to play it on those devices, which I do, unfortunately want to play it on PlayStation, it is not coming yet. There is speculation. People think it'll be coming earlier than the first game did, because they did this with the first game as well. It took 11 months from the Switch release for it to come to PlayStation and Xbox. So we'll see if they do that here. But the game looks so good. It looks excellent. I'm very excited about it, for sure. So moving on here. We had a Hyrule Warriors game. Don't really care about that. It's coming in November, though. They had the Virtual Boy that they are re-releasing as a Nintendo Classics device. That's an interesting choice, certainly. And then Metroid Prime. Yeah, Metroid Prime 4. They showed this again, and it's coming this year. They've been maintaining that it would be coming this year, and it's coming on the 4th of December. So that's a big one for sure. I will continue to contend that this game does not look great. I don't really know why we're still doing the Z targeting style combat in a first person game in 2025, but that I don't know. They did show this weird traversal mechanic though with a bike or whatever that Samus is going to have some kind of access to, so that could be interesting, I suppose, for sure there. So yeah, that's coming as well. They had some Donkey Kong Bonanza DLC, and then they had this weird game. Okay, so they had this weird game called Pokemon Pokopia coming in 2026, where Ditto pretends to be a little girl and runs like a Pokemon farm. Sorry. I think this one is very, very strange, is all I'm going to say. But hey, man, this is their way to compete with Pal World or whatever, I guess. Cool, bro. Let's see. After that, it was Danganronpa. They showed Pokemon ZA, Legends again. What else was there? I think that was it for like smaller stuff. So they had a big announcement at the end, which is, for me, this is kind of the big one. They announced a new Fire Emblem. What was it called? What's the full name? Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave is coming, and it looks like it's coming next year. So this is interesting watching this trailer, because Sothis from Three Houses appeared to be in the trailer, and she's like, all grown up compared to Three Houses where she's a kid. And clearly it's connected in some way to that game. We don't really know how based off this trailer, but there's something there for sure. I will say, gameplay wise, the setup here is some kind of gladiatorial tournament, which is kind of an interesting setup for a Fire Emblem game as well. Combat wise, I'm gonna guess it's gonna be very similar to Three Houses in a lot of ways, with some kind of improved mechanics as well. So that is kind of exciting, because I think Three Houses, it has a pretty strong gameplay in the series. I do think Engage was better in a lot of ways, but I still think Three Houses was really fun. And a really well designed Fire Emblem game. So there is that as well. So yeah, no, it looks really cool. I'm pretty excited about it. I think the trailer was really good. I'm very intrigued from a story perspective what they're doing with this game, as well, and who these characters are and what this timeline is. Where we are in the Three Houses timeline. Are we in a different area? In the world of Three Houses, because Fodlan is just one landmass in this world, or in that world. So, are we going somewhere else? Is this somewhere in the future? After Three Houses happens, or is it in the past? Maybe even potentially. Those are all kind of real questions coming out of this trailer. So, they certainly got me intrigued, and I'm excited to see more, and going to be very very happy to play it. So yeah. Those are the major announcements from the Nintendo Direct. I think it was pretty good overall. There were a couple things though. They had a Pokemon ZA, Legends ZA or whatever. They announced a DLC called Mega Dimension for it, and people are very upset about this, which is funny. They're saying that it's crazy to be announcing DLC before the game comes out, and I'm like, are these people like, do they only play Nintendo? I understand that is still a prevailing sentiment, and it's not like I necessarily disagree. I would love to go back to reality where DLC either didn't exist or wasn't announced before the game comes out. But I mean, it's like, this is so normal nowadays. Like, every company announces, they don't, like, Nintendo actually showed content of the DLC, which is, to me, better than what most other companies do. Like Borderlands, for instance. As much as I trust Gearbox follow through with good DLC policy and make good DLCs for their games, you know, like they don't show anything. They've thrown the season pass up. They actually have 2 season passes for Borderlands 4. It's fucking insane. And it's like, we have no idea what any of the content is going to be. They've given us like a vague roadmap, like kind of sort of explaining what it might look like, but we have no concrete details about any of it. So it's like, and nobody's mad about that. It's like, it's weird that we're like angry at Nintendo for this, you know? And again, this isn't new. I'm like really puzzled by this reaction to this, because it's like, dude, like I'm thinking of like Fire Emblem, like Conquest and fucking Fates or whatever. Like, they had DLC for that game right when the game came out, you know, and they announced all that pre-launch, you know. It's like, and they made 3 different games that you had to fucking buy for that game, like it was a Pokemon game, you know. And to be fair to Fates, like they're all vastly different from each other, you know, thankfully, but you know, it's still, I just still found it really weird that people felt that way or feel that way about this. So that, I don't know. Just whatever. I'm an old man yelling at clouds, I guess. It's like, I mean, like in the main, I like agree from a theoretical standpoint. It's just, we've been doing this so long. I'm just puzzled that people are getting very up in arms about this. So yeah, I don't know. But otherwise, you know, I do think it was a pretty solid direct. New Fire Emblem game is always good for me. You know, I'm always excited about that. And then release date for Metroid, and then you've got, you know, all the Mario stuff, new Yoshi game. You know, they showed a lot of new stuff here, so you know, pretty solid overall. But I will say I am a little disappointed with how little they've had ready for the Switch 2. Given how long this console was delayed for. It's kind of weird how sparse the first party lineup is in the first year for Nintendo Switch 2, but I don't know. It's neither here nor there. They're selling units and yeah, I mean, it is what it is. So yeah. All right, guys. Well, I think that's gonna be it for me here. I got through the news. You know, if you have any thoughts on, you know, I'd be curious to hear with what I said about Death Stranding, if people kind of agree with me, disagree with me, you know, where people are kind of at with that game, you know, after a few months out from it. You know, go ahead and send us an email to theplayerstake01@gmail.com. And I'd love to hear your thoughts there. Or you could tweet at me, you know, at Thunder01 on Twitter as well. And I'd love to hear what you guys think on that. But yeah, otherwise, Montrell will be back next week for our normal type of episode, our normal back and forth. And yeah, so hope you guys enjoyed this one, and we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.